Today is Wednesday, February 23rd. We'll talk about America's response to what's now being called the beginning of an invasion, and a jury verdict that's being called a victory for racial justice. Also, a new combo vaccine could be on the way. We'll explain. Plus, a groundbreaking win for women's soccer stars, where tech companies are hiring outside the West Coast, and a new face in daytime TV. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Biden says it's now official. Russia has invaded Ukraine. And with that, the U.S. and several allies announced a range of economic sanctions meant to punish Russia. The American sanctions are against two major Russian banks, Russian elites, and their family members. The U.S. also tightened rules that restrict American banks and investors from buying or trading in Russia's government bond market. This is all in response to what we told you about yesterday, Russia ordering troops into regions of eastern Ukraine, and Russia's President Putin saying those territories are no longer part of Ukraine. Russia's lawmakers formalized that yesterday by voting unanimously to let Putin use military force outside of the country. President Biden addressed that in a speech at the White House, saying, quote, "Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries?" U.S. lawmakers from both parties also condemned Russia for its latest actions. Although some Republicans were also critical of President Biden's sanctions, saying they're too little too late. For now, President Biden held back on even tougher sanctions that would really send Russia into economic turmoil. Biden says he'll go ahead with them if there's more violence. It also seems like Western leaders are losing hope a diplomatic solution is possible. The U.S. Secretary of State canceled this week's meeting with his Russian counterpart, saying Russia's actions show it's not serious about a peaceful resolution to the crisis. More than 24 European Union members unanimously agreed on their own set of sanctions against Russian officials. So did Japan, Australia, and the UK. Germany also said it was stopping the process of certifying a new Russia to Germany gas pipeline. And Ukraine called up some of the country's military reservists. As far as the U.S. military goes, President Biden still insists, quote, "We have no intention of fighting Russia." But yesterday, he decided to move more U.S. troops from other parts of Europe into the eastern region. These deployments are meant to be temporary, to be continued. The family of a black man killed exactly 2 years ago today say they've finally seen justice. That is, now that his killers have been found guilty of federal hate crimes. A jury reached the verdict yesterday against Travis McMichael, his father Gregory, and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan. They were already found guilty a few months ago of murdering Ahmaud Arbery, and they were sentenced to life in prison. But the Arbery family insisted on going to trial again so they could affirm what they've been saying all along, that Ahmaud was chased down and killed by 3 white men because he was black. To prove their case, prosecutors displayed dozens of text messages and social media posts that showed the men used racial slurs and made derogatory comments about black people. The jury also heard from witnesses who say they heard the men rant about black people in the past. Defense attorneys tried to prove their clients did not kill Arbery because of his race, but because they thought he committed crimes in their neighborhood. That argument was not enough to persuade the jury. So far, no comment from the McMichaels, Bryan, or their lawyers, but Arbery's mom did respond to the verdict, saying, quote, "Ahmaud will continue to rest in peace, but he will now begin to rest in power." COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are steadily falling in the U.S., and some health experts say that's a sign the Omicron variant might be running out of people to infect. But infectious disease specialists are also keeping a close eye on an even more contagious version of the variant. It's known as BA2, and early research shows it spreads 30% more easily than even the highly contagious Omicron variant, although it's probably not any more severe. Already, it's become the dominant strain in South Africa and other countries, and it caused another COVID-19 surge in Denmark. So far, that outbreak has not happened here in the U.S., but BA2 has been detected from coast to coast, and it accounts for about 4% of all new COVID-19 cases around the U.S. Some experts think it's unlikely BA2 will trigger a massive new surge because so many people have immunity from either earlier infections or vaccinations. But others say BA2 could evade that immunity better than the original Omicron. And recent research found some treatments are less effective against BA2 than other versions of COVID-19. So really, bottom line, scientists are tracking this one closely. Researchers are still looking into different ways to give COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, 2 more trials were launched yesterday. One of them is from Moderna. The vaccine maker is researching a combo shot that would combine a COVID-19 booster, flu shot, and a vaccine for what's known as RSV. And that would not just be convenient to have 3 shots in one, it would actually also be a breakthrough. And that's because as of right now, there is no vaccine for RSV. In case you're not familiar, that's a common respiratory virus that causes mild symptoms in most adults, but it can be deadly for older people and young children. The new study will only test the vaccine in adults older than 60. The other trial now underway is meant to see how booster shots work in lower doses. Up to 3,300 adults who've already had the first 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine will get either a full or reduced booster. Then researchers will compare the 2 groups. The hope is there won't be that much of a difference in how effective the boosters are, and a lower dose might be easier on the body, meaning fewer people will get side effects. Also, researchers are hoping it will put less of a strain on vaccine supplies worldwide, and that could help reduce the gap between rich and poor nations when it comes to vaccine access. Stay tuned. More news is coming up, but first, a quick break for our sponsor. I'm so excited to tell you about this sponsor because I've already been using Seed's Daily Synbiotic for at least a year now, thanks to a friend's recommendation, and I too love it. It's a 24-strain prebiotic plus probiotic that supports digestive health. It supports healthy skin. It promotes heart health, and so much more. It's actually clinically and scientifically studied, so you know you're getting the real deal. When I first started taking Seed, I was pregnant, and even pregnant, I felt great. So I haven't stopped taking it since, as whole body health continues to be a priority for me. Plus, I appreciate that Seed cares about the earth. In your first purchase, you'll get a glass jar that is refillable. Then your monthly refills are delivered in compostable, biodegradable, and recyclable packaging. And right now, you can get 15% off your first month's supply of Seed's Daily Synbiotic by visiting seed.com/newsworthy or by using code newsworthy at checkout. I take mine every morning. Again, go to seed.com/newsworthy or use the code newsworthy at checkout. The U.S. women's soccer team got a historic equal pay win they've been fighting for the last 6 years. Players on the team reached a landmark $24 million settlement with U.S. Soccer over their gender-based pay discrimination lawsuit. Under the settlement, $22 million of back pay will be split up between dozens of former and current players. U.S. Soccer is putting the other $2 million of the settlement into a fund for the players when they retire. Each player can apply to get up to $50,000 out of it. Plus, the U.S. Soccer Federation promised the women's and men's national soccer teams would get equal pay from here on out. U.S. Soccer also agreed to equal bonuses, like for the World Cup, which was a big sticking point for the women's team since they've won 4 World Cup championships in the program's 37-year history, compared to the men's team, which has not gotten to a semifinal since 1930. In the past, the Federation was criticized for arguing to the court that women's players were less skilled and worked less demanding jobs than the men. But the Federation president who made that point ended up resigning. And now the new president, who's also a former player, says she's ready to rebuild the relationship with the team. The settlement will not be finalized until a new collective bargaining agreement is set for the women's team. Instead of a selfie, the IRS now wants taxpayers to do a virtual interview to prove who they are. The IRS says people who want to register for an online account can verify who they are with a live virtual interview with a representative. Now, to be clear, you do not need an IRS account to pay taxes or to get your refund, but it lets you see tax information and use the agency's tools online. The IRS faced backlash from lawmakers and digital rights activists over privacy concerns when it wanted to use face scans to verify identities. So that's not in the plans anymore. But future tax seasons will still look different. The IRS plans to give people the option to use login.gov instead of a face scan or the virtual interview. That's a site that allows secure access to online tools for a variety of government agencies already. And a heads up, this year's tax filing deadline is Monday, April 18th. Meta's Facebook is stepping up its TikTok rivalry and going global with short-form videos known as Reels. Reels, of course, first launched on Instagram in 2020 and then on Facebook last year, at least for the US and a few other countries like Canada and Mexico. So now Meta says it's releasing Reels to Facebook users in more than 150 countries and adding new features for creators to make money through Reels. These moves come as Facebook and Instagram compete with TikTok, which was the most downloaded app of 2021, while Facebook lost users for the first time late last year. Changes are coming to daytime TV. The Wendy Williams show is ending after 13 seasons, and a new show is taking its place. Williams has been off the air this season dealing with health issues, most recently COVID-19, on top of her ongoing problems with the autoimmune disorder Graves' disease. Many celebs have filled in for Williams, including Leah Remini, Jerry Springer, and Sherri Shepherd. Well, producers announced that Shepherd is getting the new talk show, and it'll take over the Wendy Williams time slot. You may know Shepherd from when she used to co-host The View or from one of her many acting roles. The new talk show called Sherri debuts this fall. And that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. Before I started the Newsworthy, I worked for more than a decade in traditional TV news, and I saw a lot of sad stuff in person every day. It's a big part of why I left and started this podcast, not only for myself, but also for others who felt bombarded by too much sad, alarming news. And I realized if we're not careful, any stress that we face in our lives repeatedly can lead to unnecessary anxiety. But thanks to therapy, it doesn't have to. And BetterHelp offers professional counseling that is both convenient and affordable. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist in a safe and private online environment, so you can connect from the comfort of your home. BetterHelp's counselors specialize in a variety of areas, including stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, grief, self-esteem, and more. I want you to start living a happier life today. And as a Newsworthy listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting BetterHelp.com/newsworthy. Join more than 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/newsworthy. Now back to Work Wednesday. For a while now, all the hottest tech jobs were in places like San Francisco or Seattle, but not anymore. A new analysis from the research group Conference Board looked at where technology companies are hiring higher-educated white-collar workers, and it found 40% of the postings from traditionally West Coast tech companies are for jobs outside of the region. Texas is by far the top state destination, especially in Austin, where Tesla just moved its headquarters. When it comes to big metro areas, Washington, D.C. comes out on top, followed by New York City. Also, Denver, Colorado, and Nashville, Tennessee have seen some of the biggest increases in tech job postings. This trend actually started before COVID-19 changed our worlds, but the pandemic definitely accelerated it, since so many companies went fully or partially remote. And with that, a lot of workers left California and instead chose places where the cost of living is cheaper. But tech firms are also just expanding. Amazon has a new headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, and Google is setting up in Manhattan. All right, thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.